What happened at midnight? Why the dogs barked at the bread seller. Shocking truth revealed. At the stroke of midnight, the quiet town of Mayfield was suddenly rattled awake by a chorus of barking dogs. They all faced the same direction, toward the old bread seller's cart parked under the flickering streetlight. It was strange enough for the townsfolk to peer from their windows, hearts racing, wondering what could have caused such a disturbance. Was it a wild animal? Or something far more sinister hidden in the darkness? The bread seller, a local fixture known for her warm smiles and delicious loaves, stood motionless beside her cart, clutching a white bread sack as if it contained secrets of unimaginable gravity. Suddenly, a local boy, Tommy, darted toward her, his face pale and eyes wide like saucers. "What's wrong with them, ma'am?" he whimpered, glancing nervously at the dogs who barked wildly, their fur bristling like startled flags. The ambient sounds felt like they were sparking off the walls, an electric buzz of fear in the air. As Tommy closed the distance, the scent of fresh bread wafted through the air, mixed with an unsettling hint of something else, something rancid and familiar. His chest tightened. Was that rotting meat? The heavy, oppressive air thickened around them, stifling and strange. Why were the dogs so wild? What had they seen? In that moment it became clear. This was no ordinary midnight scene. A muted howl echoed from the shadows nearby, more chilling than the clamoring of the barking dogs. A tremor rippled through the crowd gathering on the street. Murmurs spread like wildfire. The gawkers were drawn in by the palpable tension. Why are they barking? What's going on? They couldn't look away, hooked by the mystery. It was a spectacle that wouldn't let them turn back now. Hey! Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the tension mounted, the bread seller's face twisted into a mask of dread. The dogs suddenly stopped barking and strained at their leashes, staring into the darkness with eyes wide open, as if the shadows themselves were alive and watching. People exchanged bewildered glances, their hearts thumping, breathing shallow with fear. Each breath felt heavier as they awaited whatever was lurking beneath the nighttime veil. Then, just as quickly as it started, silence enveloped them, the kind that seems to swallow everything whole. What were they all about to discover in this strange midnight hour? Tommy's heart raced faster than a jackrabbit in a field. His senses heightened as the moment stretched into uneasy silence. The flickering streetlight cast a shaky halo around the bread seller, shadowing her face in a stark contrast of light and dark. Just beyond that circle, the stillness seemed relentless, as if the world held its breath in anticipation. The dogs, now on high alert, lowered their hackles and focused intently into the inky blackness. Unseen eyes watched them from the shadows, their presence barely a whisper in the night. The townsfolk huddled closer together, tension crackling like a live wire. "What do we do?" someone whispered, the words feeling heavy as they hung in the air. Before anyone could answer, the ground beneath them seemed to tremble slightly, just enough to be felt, a shiver racing through the crowd. The dogs barked again, but this time their barks were more frantic, more distressed. Tommy felt an insidious fear creeping in, the kind that wrapped around him like a vine, tightening its grip with every passing second. Something was deeply wrong. The bread seller, glancing nervously around at the gathering crowd, suddenly stepped forward. "Everyone, please, stay back." Her voice rang out, surprisingly steady amidst her fear. "It's not what you think." Her eyes darted toward the shadows, seeking reassurance or perhaps acknowledging a looming threat. But her attempt at calm only escalated the anxiety. Whispers erupted among the crowd, speculations flying about wild animals, a ghost, or worse. Some claimed they saw things moving in the dark. "I think I saw a figure," Someone gasped. More than one person recoiled, as if expecting the worst to spring from the shadows. Suddenly, with a brutal rush, an unearthly cry sliced through the silence. Guttural and terrifying, it echoed down the street like a warning. The dogs froze, merging into statues of alertness, their bodies rigid, muscles coiled like springs, poised to explode into action. At that moment, even the bravest in the crowd felt the icy grip of dread prickling at their spines. "Get a lantern. We need light," a voice shouted. Panic spread like wildfire, bodies jostling as people scrambled to find anything that could ward off the growing darkness. Tommy's fingers trembled as he looked around. He didn't want to leave that bread cellar aside, but every instinct screamed that danger lurked just out of view. And then, as if mocking their fear, a creaking sound filled the air, an ominous groan, like something vast and monstrous shifting restlessly in its sleep. The townsfolk pressed closer together, their eyes wide, each breath sharp with anticipation. "Look," a girl pointed, trembling. In the dim glow of the distant streetlight, a figure emerged, cloaked in shadows. It moved in a fluid, unnatural way, seemingly gliding toward them, the flickering light revealing just enough to amplify horror. Tommy's throat turned dry. It was not just a shadow. Whatever it was bore a shape, a large silhouette that loomed like a specter, drawing nearer with every heartbeat. The bread seller's eyes filled with terror, and the dogs erupted into howls, raw, emotional cries that echoed against the silent air. "Run!" she screamed suddenly, breaking the hold of fear as she turned to flee. Chaos erupted, hearts pounding in unison. People scattered in all directions, leaving behind whispers of panic and dread. Tommy hesitated, torn between the safety of retreating and the pull of curiosity. What lay hidden in the darkness? The last thing he caught was the bread seller's terrified gaze locked on the shadow, a mixture of realization and fear flickering within, and just as he turned to follow, he felt something cold brush past him, whispering secrets he was not meant to know. What was truly waiting in the shadows, not just for Tommy, but for the entire town of Mayfield. The night was far from over, and the darkness had only just begun to reveal its secrets. Tommy bolted into the night, adrenaline surging as his pulse thundered in his ears. He didn't dare look back. Something told him any glance in that direction might freeze him in place. He weaved between the fleeing townsfolk, their faces twisted in a blend of fear and disbelief. The scent of sweat and panic mingled in the air, thick and suffocating. "Over here," a man yelled, rallying a few stragglers toward a nearby shed, the town's forgotten storage unit, overgrown with weeds and the remnants of old memories. But as they sprinted toward that shadowy refuge, the unnatural sound returned, deep, rumbling, like the growl of a slumbering beast awakening from its lengthy rest. The noise rattled through the street, shaking the ground beneath Tommy's feet. Daring a quick glance back, he saw the shadow coalesce into a more defined shape, blurring at the edges. His breath caught in his throat. It seemed far too large, far too monstrous to belong to anything natural. A figure loomed just beyond the streetlight's feeble glow. It had a presence that felt ancient, imbued with primal terror. "Tommy, come on," shouted his friend Mike, who had somehow found him in the chaos. He reached out, pulling Tommy toward the shed. The words were meant to rally spirits, but they echoed hollowly against the backdrop of dread. Inside the shed, darkness enveloped them like a thick blanket. The scent of rust and decay filled their nostrils. An old scythe leaned against the wall, remnants of a time when men wielded tools instead of weapons against the unknown. Tommy's eyes struggled to adjust, desperate to pierce through the shadows and find reassurance. "Do you think it's gone?" Tommy whispered, his voice barely breaking the silence, thick and suffocating. "How should I know?" Mike snapped back, the edge of his own panic evident. But despite their fear, a shared bond of quiet resolution flickered between them, friendship forged in danger. The cries of the dogs, still outside, echoed in their ears, rising and falling like waves crashing against the shore. "What was that thing?" Tommy asked, unable to shake the image of the towering figure from his mind. His heart hammered as they waited, each breath tightening the undesired knot in his stomach. "I don't know," But what if it's not just some wild animal? Mike's voice trembled, thoughts spilling into anxious words. What if it's something the town has dealt with before? Something we're not allowed to know about. Just then, a sound sharp and deliberate cut through the gloom, silencing all else. A slow, deliberate scraping followed by a low hiss slid through the cracks of the shed. An unease blossomed between Tommy and Mike, limbs stiff with fear. "Do you hear that?" Tommy murmured, eyes wide with alarm. "Yeah." Mike nodded slowly, gripping the edge of a wooden crate. "What do we do now?" He didn't have time to respond. The door rattled violently, and shadows danced across the walls as the wind picked up. An ominous chill swept through the shed as if a dark force had entered, bringing with it the whispers of forgotten souls. "Open the door," someone called from outside. It was one of their neighbors, a woman named Clara. Her normally kind voice twisted now with urgent terror. "Are you out of your mind?" Mike shot back, fear bubbling over. What if that thing is out there? But the door banged again, louder this time. "Let us in," Clara yelled, panic drowning her usually calm demeanor. Tommy looked at Mike, weighing the risk against the pressing uncertainty. Suddenly, the air felt heavier, pressing down as if signaling something was very wrong. "Do you think it's even safe?" Tommy whispered, his voice shaking. Before Mike could answer, the door burst open, engulfing the room in chaotic darkness. A wave of cold air swept in, bringing Clara with it pale and breathless, eyes darting like a trapped animal. "It's coming," her voice trembled. "What did you see?" They all exchanged glances, vulnerability hanging between them thick as syrup. But as they stood there, breaths coming in short gasps, none dared to share exactly what slumbered in the shadows and what might rise with the dawning light. Suddenly, a low, throaty growl vibrated through the ground beneath their feet, curling into their bones, yet again pressing the question that hung over them like a cloud ready to burst. What else had the night brought forth that they had yet to uncover? The door swung wide, and the light from the outside seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Clara stumbled in, her breath ragged, the fear in her eyes bright and frantic. It was a horror reflected in the faces of Tommy and Mike, stitched with confusion and adrenaline. "What did you see?" she gasped, glancing over her shoulder, as if the darkness itself might swallow her whole. Tommy felt a cold sweat bead on his forehead. Just a shadow. Something massive," he stammered, struggling to articulate the unseen terror that still choked his throat. "It was different, Clara. Not like any animal." Mike shook his head, disbelief mingling with dread. "It's not just a wild beast. It's something else. Something that should not be here." A gust of wind howled, rattling the shed as if demanding entry. The dogs outside, recognizing the danger, had shifted into a frenzy of barking. Their feral cries echoed, rising and falling with a dizzying urgency. Every bark felt like a battle cry for the damned. "Shut them up," Clara shouted, her voice a mixture of fear and the primal instinct to survive. "They're drawing it closer." And then, a storm of heavy silence enveloped them, cutting through the cacophony outside. It was broken only by the scrapes of something immense against the wooden walls. The sound slithered into their bones, sending a shiver racing down Tommy's spine. "We can't just sit here," Mike said, a wild look in his eyes. "We have to find a way out. Maybe we can go through the back." "No," Clara interrupted, her voice sharp as glass. "You don't understand. It wants us to move. It draws us out. It wants to pick us off." A low growl surfaced again, sonorous and vibrating. Adrenaline surged anew in Tommy's veins, and instinct kicked in. "We have to arm ourselves." He grabbed the ancient scythe, its rusted edge glinting menacingly in the dim light. Mike followed suit, securing a hefty, forgotten wrench from the floor. Clara's eyes darted between them, torn between fear and determination. "This isn't just about weapons. It's hiding something from us. We need to figure out what it is first." "But how?" Tommy asked, sweat trickling down his brow. "None of us know what we're up against." Another thud resounded, heavier this time, as if something were testing its strength against the shed. It was a reminder that time was waning, and whatever nightmare pursued them was drawing closer by the second. "I saw something earlier," Clara blurted out, her voice breaking slightly. "A figure moving at the edge of the woods. It wasn't just the shadow. It flickered, like it was playing tricks on my eyes." Mike narrowed his gaze. Those tricks were no illusion. It was likely feeding on our fear, he whispered, recalling how every heartbeat amplified the dread. The air pulsed with tension as a flash of movement pierced the shadows. Something outside moved, a massive shape that prowled in the dark with purpose and intent. The air thickened with the smell of rot and despair, and every shallow breath felt like an encroaching doom. "Do you think it knows we're in here?" Tommy stammered, his grip tightening on the scythe as if it were an anchor against the storm of panic. "I'm not waiting to find out," Mike shouted, suddenly breaking from the group. "Let us just go." Before they could react, he threw the door wide open and stepped outside. The cold air slapped them before they could follow. Tommy cursed under his breath as their escape route evaporated into thin air at that moment. Fear gripped him, solid as the blade in his hand. "We'll be torn apart," Clara uttered, her eyes blazing with both horror and fury. "Mike, don't." But it was too late. As Mike dashed into the night, the growl intensified, almost mocking their plight. It resonated through the ground, vibrating into their very bones. Tommy and Clara exchanged a glance, and in that moment, unspoken decisions wrestled within them. They needed to face this shadow head-on. They needed to know the truth. Yet, as they stepped into the murky night, the reality hit hard. What awaited them out there was far more than shadows and howls. Was a darkness fed by their secrets, a terror waiting to be unleashed. "Come on," Clara shouted, her resolve igniting a fire in Tommy's insides. "We can't abandon him now." And as they plunged into the night, the question loomed larger than the presence stalking them. What truth lay buried in the heart of that darkness, and would they survive to uncover it? The darkness closed in around Tommy and Clara, swallowing them whole as they stepped into the pitch black of the night. The air was thick with uncertainty, and every sound seemed amplified: a rustling leaf, a low growl. Even the thud of their own hearts echoed like a distant drum roll. "Where did he go?" Clara hissed, her eyes scanning the treeline, its tangled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. "Stay close," Tommy whispered, his voice barely above a breath. The scythe felt like a weight pressing against his palm. It was meant for harvesting, not for wielding against nightmares. "If we stay together, we can find him." But the woods felt alive, shifting with unseen movements, shadows bending in ways they shouldn't. Off in the distance, the dogs' yelps had turned into a chorus of despair. It felt like a warning, a harbinger of something worse encroaching upon them. "Mike!" Clara shouted, her voice piercing through the suffocating silence. There was only an echo in reply, a fading gasp carried off by the wind. "Where are you?" The raw fear churned in Tommy's stomach, the urge to run clawing at him. But it was drowned out by the sinking realization that they were now partially responsible for whatever had pulled Mike away. Their friend was out there, and with each passing second, they could hear the growl crescendoing, a predatory symphony growing louder. A flicker of movement caught his attention. It was quick, darting in the periphery. Clara noticed too, her breath hitching as she turned toward it. "What was that?" she whispered. "I don't know," Tommy replied, his tone taut. "But we should follow it. Could lead us back to Mike." Clara hesitated, her expression conflicted. "Or it could lead us to whatever that is hunting us." He took a resolute step forward, driven by a mixture of fear and determination. "We don't have a choice." As they crept deeper into the woods, branches snagged at their clothes, the crunch of twigs underfoot sounding monstrous in the stillness. Each step felt heavy, as if the ground itself resisted their advance. The air grew colder, thick with a musty scent that made Tommy's stomach churn. A sudden crash shattered the tension. The underbrush exploded nearby. Clara jumped, grounding herself against a tree. "What was that?" Her voice quivered. "There." Tommy pointed toward the source, adrenaline flooding his system as he scanned the area. The darkness flickered again, and his pulse quickened. We need to be brave. Could be Mike. They dashed forward, hearts hammering a frantic dash into the unknown. The growl erupted again, rattling the leaves and sending a jolt of terror through Tommy. This time it was closer, dangerously so. They needed to move faster. Mike! Clara's voice broke through the dark like a fragile glass shattering in the silence. And then they heard it, an answering cry, a mix of surprise and fear. Here. It was Mike, just ahead, somewhere in the shadowed underbrush. Help! Before they could answer, a dark shape burst from the shadows, lunging at Mike. Time stopped. Tommy's instincts kicked in, and he raised the scythe, ready to charge. But Clara grabbed his arm, her grip fierce. Wait, don't! It was too late. The figure bore down on Mike, and in that instant, Tommy realized they were not just fighting a mindless beast. This was something else entirely, something conscious, aware of them, something that thrived on their terror. What do you want? Clara screamed, her voice spiraling into despair. The creature halted, swirling shadows coalescing into a horrifying semblance of form, flesh and darkness merging into one. It leaned closer, its height dwarfed only by the dread that surrounded it. The scent of decay washed over them, wrapping around their lungs, and then, like a whisper from a nightmare, it spoke, its voice laced with malice. I want your secrets, your fears, your souls. Tommy felt a sickening lurch in his gut, fear and adrenaline becoming indistinguishable. In this moment he realized, the shadows were not just out there. They were also in here, lurking within them. As the creature lunged again, Tommy screamed, "Run!" But the night was unyielding, and they were far from safe. The truth they sought was more horrifying than they ever imagined, and the shadows were hungry for revelation. What if their secrets were the very key to survival? How much would they have to sacrifice to escape the darkness? Tommy barely took a second to register the creature's words before instinct kicked in, propelling him forward into the dark like a bullet from a gun. Clara was right behind him, her breath quickening, panic tasting bitter on her tongue. Adrenaline flooded Tommy's veins. His decision wasn't his anymore, it was primal. A simple need to survive. The branches lashed at them like whips, the underbrush crackling beneath their frantic steps. We have to find Mike, Clara gasped, but Tommy could hardly respond. The chilling growl of the shadow beast echoed around them, twisting in the air, a grim reminder that danger was never far behind. Suddenly, the ground gave way beneath Tommy, and he stumbled, falling onto his knees, hands scraping against the hard, lumpy earth. Clara lurched forward to help him, but as she grabbed his arm, a piercing howl erupted from the depths of the woods. It was a sound of pure desperation, a symphony of agony that clawed at their hearts. "Tommy!" Clara shouted, pulling him up. "We need to keep moving." Shaking off the looming dread, they pressed on through the thicket, the darkness thrumming with unseen energy. Tommy's breath came in harsh gasps. Memories of their childhood came flooding back: camping trips, ghost stories around the fire, the foolish courage of youth. But this was no sleepover nightmare. This was a well of shadows promising them more than just fear. Then they saw him, Mike, illuminated faintly by a sliver of moonlight. He was struggling against something, thrashing, and the shadows swept around him like a shroud. "Mike!" Clara screamed, desperation creasing her voice as she rushed toward him. "Get it off me!" Mike shouted, panic flooding his features. A mass of darkness was wrapping around his legs, slithering up his body. It twisted and turned, merging with the very fabric of night. Tommy felt frozen, his body caught in a tug-of-war between fear and the urge to help. "Clara, wait!" But she was already in stride, driven by love and loyalty. The scythe felt heavier in Tommy's hands. "What do we do?" he cried, his voice drenched in urgency, fighting against the tightening grip of dread. "Cut it!" Clara yelled. "Just cut it!" But that monstrous whisper curled back into his mind. "Your secrets, your fears, the scythe isn't for this." He thought frantically. "It's not a weapon." "Tommy!" Clara's voice broke through, sharper now, tinged with desperation. "Help!" Adrenaline surged again, sharper and brighter. channeling his inner turmoil into a singular point of focus. He charged forward, swinging the scythe with all the strength he could muster. Connected with the shadows, and for a heartbeat, time slowed. The darkness hissed, as if hurt, recoiling from the blade with a visceral, palpable fear. The grip on Mike loosened, and he fell free, gasping for breath like a man emerged from underwater. "Run!" he yelled, scrambling back. But there was no time. The creature was angry now, coiling tightly, ready to retaliate. Tension ignited in the air as the creature seemed to swell, the darkness pulsing in and out, reshaping itself into multiple forms, faces twisting in agony. Secrets, fears. What does it want? Mike shouted, scrambling to his feet. What does it want from us? Clara's eyes darted around wildly, panic giving way to realization. It wants us to face it. It wants to feed on our fear. Then don't be afraid, Tommy yelled, pumping himself with courage he didn't know he possessed. But their fears weren't easy to shake off. Clara stared into the abyss and whispered, "I'm terrified of losing you both." As if on cue, darkness surged forward. Laughter echoed in a cacophony of madness. In that instant, Tommy understood. The creature thrived on doubt and despair. "Then we have to stand together," he shouted, gripping Clara's hand tight. "We have to confront it." A flicker of hesitation crossed Clara's eyes, but determination ignited in them like a spark catching fire. Just as the shadows lurched, ready to engulf them, Tommy took a deep breath and screamed, "We've had enough. You don't own us." The creature shrieked, twisting violently, the sound piercing like thunder. But at that moment, another realization hit him, sharpened by fear. What if facing it means confronting our darkest secrets? What if revealing them is the only way to escape? The surrounding darkness began to swirl, as if absorbing the weight of his words. The silence that followed tasted of dread. What if confronting their deepest fears was the key? But at what cost? They had barely begun their journey into the shadows. Would the truth set them free, or swallow them whole? The night held its breath, waiting for their next move. The darkness pulsed like a wounded heart, sending shivers down Tommy's spine. He didn't let go of Clara's hand, but he could feel her trembling. It wasn't just fear that gripped them now. It was the weight of their unspoken truths, floating to the surface like ghosts. Clara breathed, her voice barely a whisper. "What if the creature does know our secrets?" He gritted his teeth, trying to ignore the cold dread coiling tighter around his chest. "Then we have to be ready to face it, together." In that moment, the shadows twisted again, forming a grotesque visage that seemed to leer at them, eyes swirling with malice. "What will you sacrifice?" it hissed, its voice like ice scraping against bone. "What will you give me to be free?" "Nothing," Mike shouted defiantly, stepping forward, emboldened by their unity. But desperation flickered across his face. "What do you want?" "We're not afraid of you." The creature laughed, a sound like nails on glass. "Fear? You misunderstand. I feast on despair itself, the pain you hide so well." Tommy swallowed hard. The very notion that the creature fed on their suffering struck him with a deep, unsettling truth. Clara's face went pale. "Tell it," she urged, squeezing Tommy's hand tight. "What we need to say. We can't keep running." But could he? The thought of revealing his darkest fear, the one that lay buried beneath layers of shame, felt like standing before a guillotine. In that flickering moonlight, the forest held its breath, the wind seeming to whisper warnings that played games with his resolve. "What if it is right?" Clara's voice trembled. "What if exposing our truths is the only way out?" "That's not true," Tommy snapped, anger flaring like a match struck in the dark. "We fight together. We don't give in." The creature shrieked, the sound a blend of anger and amusement. "Such foolish bravery. You think your truth gives you strength? How naive. What lies will you reveal?" Tommy felt pressure build inside him, the need to scream and push the dark back with everything he had. "If you want our secrets," he shouted, "then here it is. I'm terrified of losing you, Clara. I'm scared of not being good enough." Silence followed his confession, thick and suffocating. The creature paused, as if caught off guard by the authenticity of his words. But in that heartbeat, a flicker of hope ignited. Clara looked deep into his eyes. "Let us do this together, Tommy. I fear the same. But I also fear the monster in me, the part that thinks it's my fault we're here." The shadows shifted uneasily, and Tommy saw a glimmer of doubt in the creature. "More," it demanded, fury boiling beneath its monstrous guise. "You think that's enough? Show me more." Mike stepped forward, shaking. "Fine. I'll spill too. I've always been scared that I'm the weak link, that I'll let you both down when you need me the most." The darkness writhed, the creature's rage a cacophony in the night. "Feed me your despair. Let it out." The impulse to run surged again. But now, they stood strong, fists clenched and hearts racing, baring their souls to the monster. Tommy could feel the fear crawling back, clawing at his wrists, but he clung to Clara. "What if being honest is our only way out? Then we're going to fight," she yelled, finally finding her voice. Together, with renewed hope, they formed a circle, hands clasped. As one, they shouted their truths into the void, the things they hated about themselves, the failures, the fears that had haunted them all their lives. Each confession was a blinding light slicing through the darkness, as if pierced by the light of their vulnerability. The creature howled, writhing violently. The shadows twisted, shrinking, as they faced their innermost fears together. But victory felt elusive. An unknown tension hung in the air. As the creature spasmed, Tommy noticed a flicker of something. Could it be an escape, or a deeper trap? Just as he thought they might be winning, the shadows surged back, coiling tighter than ever. What had they unleashed in their moment of vulnerability? The night trembled, and a chilling voice echoed amongst them. "You think I am defeated? No, I feed well tonight." What would confronting their deepest fears cost them? And would the truth truly set them free, or entrap them even further? The creature's laughter echoed in the dark, leaving them in suspense. The shadows recoiled, a writhing mass of darkness and fury. Tommy's heart raced as the air crackled with tension. Clara and Mike squeezed his hands tighter, their united front trembling against the malevolent force before them. The creature's laughter echoed in the still night, wrapping around them like a chilling embrace. "Do you feel it?" Taunted voice slick as oil. "Your honesty does nothing. I was born from your fears and I will thrive on them." "Shut up," Mike shouted, anger slicing through the despair. "You're nothing but a parasite." The creature lunged, and for a brief moment, darkness closed in like a tidal wave. Tommy felt a suffocating pressure, more than just fear. It was the weight of their shared pain. "What do we do?" he gasped, frantic eyes darting between Clara and Mike. "Don't back down," Clara shouted, her voice strong as steel. "Remember our truths. Make them our weapons." The creature hissed, "Your pitiful stories are like breadcrumbs to a starving wolf. Feed me your real pain." Tommy's breath hitched. What more could they unveil? He could feel his secret desires clawing at him, the part of him that longed for acceptance, for love. But alongside it, there was another part, darker and twisted, whispering to just give in, to let despair win. He clenched his jaw. "You want pain? Hear us more. I hate that I'm so weak sometimes. I'm terrified of failing you both when it really matters." The air grew thick, and silence swept through the clearing like a mist. The creature froze, a shift in its monstrous form. Hope flickered. But Tommy held his breath. Was it working? Clara stepped forward, her voice fragile yet fierce. "I'm scared I'll never be enough. I don't just fear the monster outside. I fear the one inside me too." Her gaze bore into Tommy's. He could see she was channeling her fear into something powerful. The shadows around them writhed, but Tommy stayed steady. From the edges of despair came flickers of their truths. Each raw confession another shard of light cutting through the gloom. Mike shouted, "I'm terrified of being alone, of not being able to protect you both." The shadows surged, the creature's fury evident. "Feed me more. I grow stronger." Suddenly, everything shifted. The forest around them pulsed with a heartbeat of its own. The trees trembled, leaves whispering secrets. Tommy's pulse quickened, breathing heavy as he realized. Maybe truth didn't just expose weakness, it could illuminate something fierce. Together, Clara echoed, her voice spiraling into the night. Together we will conquer this. They began chanting their fears in unison, each confession melding into the air like tendrils of fire. The creature howled, the sound weaving through the branches, rattling the very soul of the night. But just as their collective truth began to take root, the shadows coiled tighter. Waves of dread washed over Tommy. Doubt clawed at him. What if it is too late? He thought, the words heavy on his tongue. What if we're only feeding it? The creature screamed, a horrific sound that echoed in the night, a mix of anger and desperation. You think your strength can overcome me? I thrive in chaos. I am your chaos. In that moment, Tommy realized this wasn't just about fighting the creature. It was about understanding that their insecurities were intertwined with their strength. Keep going, he urged, emboldened now. Hollow out that darkness. Let the light in. Just as it seemed their voices melded into a powerful force against the night, the shadows lashed back, ripping through their shared moment. What if by exposing our truths we're losing ourselves? Clara's voice quivered, uncertainty prickling her determination. The creature cackled, its essence swelling as it fed on their doubt. Keep digging. The deeper you go, the more I can take. With sweat beading on his brow, Tommy steeled himself, terror gnawing at the edges of his resolve. If they were to defeat this creature, this manifestation of all they feared, they would have to confront something darker than their failures. Together, he shouted, rallying strength from every corner of his heart. As the shadows enveloped them once more, their fears spiraled into something tangible, and with each confession, the ground beneath them trembled. Would they break through the other side, or unravel in the process? The creature's laughter echoed, promising that the end was just the beginning. What else could be revealed in the depths of their fears? Would the truth truly bind them or tear them apart? Tommy's heart thundered, synchronization of fear and fury shaking his limbs. It felt like the earth itself was about to split. The blackness pulled at him, promising everything they had ever feared: shame, doubt, the feeling of being utterly alone. Do not back down, Clara shouted again, stronger this time. The conviction in her voice surged through Tommy, igniting a small light within. Could they really channel their fears into strength? He caught Mike's eye, the determination there resonating like a drumbeat. They were terrified, yes, but they were also warriors, bound by shared truths. Let us dig deeper, Tommy urged, his voice barely above a whisper but full of urgency. What else lies in the shadows? The creature sneered, its voice an icy wind that chilled the very marrow of their bones. You think you can conquer the abyss? You are so small, so insignificant. Tommy could feel the weight of its taunt, but he locked eyes with Clara. We're not small. We matter. Our truths matter. The ground bucked beneath them, shaking as if responding to their convictions. Clara and Mike nodded, eyes alight with understanding. This fight was about more than them. It symbolized every burden they had borne alone for too long. Clara, Mike called out, desperation breaking through his calm facade. What about the time you felt like you couldn't breathe? When your heart felt heavy? Share that. We're with you. Clara's eyes widened for a moment, shadows flickering with uncertainty. But then she took a bold step forward. I'm terrified that I'll drown in my own emotions, that the darkness inside me will overwhelm everything good. The creature recoiled. Weakness? No, Tommy shouted. The strength to admit we are afraid. Share it. With each confession, each slice of vulnerability laid bare, the shadows crackled against the force of their collective honesty. As Mike raised his voice next, fear twisted in Tommy's stomach, but he wouldn't back down. They were all heroes of their own story, even with their secrets. I'm always afraid I'll mess up, ruin everything I touch, Mike bellowed, conviction laced with heartache. Yes, Tommy echoed, his voice rising. And what if we fall? What if we get back up no matter what? What will we learn about ourselves? The creature hissed, feasting on their emotions, but it was losing power. The ground vibrated, and the whispering leaves began to pull back, allowing a rush of cool air to sweep through. The darkness was fighting, thrashing against their truth. What's the worst thing that could happen? Clara yelled, voice rising above the chaos. What if we're scared and still move forward? What if we defy the whispers? Tommy took a daring step forward. What if we embrace our fears instead of running from them? Doubt clawed at his confidence. What was he doing? But in that moment, he felt Clara and Mike grip his arms tighter. They were interwoven threads of light against the dark tapestry surrounding them. The creature shrieked now, voice shrill with anger. No, you are only anchoring yourselves to despair. You will fall. Never. They shouted in unison, each voice a declaration of their fight, their resilience. The shadows stuttered, flickering like flames in the wind. Maybe this was it, the breakthrough they needed. But even as their collective strength reached a fever pitch, the ground boiled beneath them. Do you think you can drown me? I will always rise from the ashes of your fear. Rumbles of thunder rolled overhead, the sky darkening more ominously. The wind picked up, debris whipping around as panic spiraled outward. Tommy's pulse raced. The creature's words held a layer of truth, and uncertainty bubbled within him. What if we're just stirring the storm? Clara's face turned pale, uncertainty creeping back into her eyes. What if we can't hold it back? They stood on the precipice of revelation, the creature's voice settling heavily around them. Would their unified truths be strong enough to shatter the darkness? Or were they about to unleash an even deeper chaos? They had awakened something within, the courage to confront their fears. But at what cost? Their hearts thundered in unison. The battle had only just begun, and the true nature of their fight still loomed above them. What else lay beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to strike? The shadows twisted and churned, growing larger as the creature coiled with fury. Tommy felt a rush of dread, but he held fast to Clara and Mike. They would not bend. Not now. Let us take one last stand. Tommy yelled, fear still thrumming through him, but now accompanied by a fierce determination. We shared our fears. Carrying them together, we can conquer this darkness. Clara nodded, her face resolute. We are more than our fears. We are a force. The monster loomed larger, its form dark and treacherous faces twisted in despair. It whispered carefully, you think the truth gives you strength? You will only fall further. Tommy raised the scythe high, feeling its weight in his hands, the blade no longer just an object but a symbol of their resolve. We are ready to face what we fear. We will not hide anymore. The creature howled, the sound reverberating against the trees, shaking the ground beneath them. It surged forward, shadows clawing through the air, desperate to ensnare them. But they stood firm, eyes locked on its ghastly shape, hearts pounding louder than the chaos. Remember, Clara shouted, we are not alone. We stand together. As if ignited by her words, they began chanting, voices rising in unison. We are strong. We will not submit. We will face our fears together. With every repetition, their voices grew clearer, stronger. The shadows shrank, flickering as if they couldn't withstand the power of their collective energy. Feed on us? No, we will not be your prey. Mike roared defiantly. The creature recoiled, hissing in outrage. Foolish mortals, your bravery is misplaced. You will perish. But the deeper they dug into their inner strength, the less the shadows seemed to hold power over them. They no longer felt small but magnificent, igniting a flame from the embers of their vulnerability. I fought my own demons, Tommy shouted, but not anymore. We reclaim our light. The darkness thrashed against the force of their resilience, its twisted forms breaking apart. I will take you. Your secrets. Your pain. The creature screeched, but they pushed back harder, fists clenched in unity. Together, Clara cried. Together we heal. As their voices crescendoed, the air rippled with power. Light began to spill out from within them, brighter than the dawn, brighter than the fears they had carried. The shadows, their fears, were not insurmountable. They were only shadows. Finally, with one last cry of defiance, they turned directly toward the beast. You have no power over us. They shouted in unison, pouring their hearts into the words with that declaration. A bolt of light shot forth from their joined hands, the scythe glowing. Clara and Mike bathed in shimmering radiance. The energy pushed back against the creature, flooding the space with brightness until the darkness began to dissolve, evaporating like mist before the sun. The shadows shrieked a sound of disbelief before crumbling away, revealing the moonlit woods beyond. Silence enveloped them. Tommy, Clara, and Mike stood panting, the fear of the night lifting like a veil. They looked around. The forest had transformed. It now pulsed with life, the air fresh and sweet. "We did it," Clara exclaimed, tears streaming down her face, reflections of relief and triumph. "We fought and we won." Tommy felt a wild mix of exhaustion and elation. This night would forever mark a turning point. They were not just survivors, they were warriors of their own truths. The final breath of darkness echoed away, leaving behind an untouched silence, the settling stillness comforting against the ache of their chests. "Everything we faced led us here," Mike said, his voice steady, a soothing balm after the storm. None of this was in vain. As they stood in the aftermath, illuminated under the stars, a sense of profound hope wrapped around them. They were bound not just by fear but by bravery. They had glimpsed their darkest parts and still emerged whole, an undeniable strength forged through vulnerability. "We have to tell everyone," Tommy said. "They need to know they're not alone, that there's light after the shadows." A chorus of agreement followed, their voices harmonizing in a melody of newfound purpose. Together, Clara said softly, "We can keep the darkness at bay." And so, as they turned to leave the woods and re-enter their town of Mayfield, they carried with them not only their victory but also a promise to support one another, to share their truths, and remind everyone they encountered that it's okay to fear, but there's unimaginable power when one dares to stand firm against I. As they strode forward, a tired yet hopeful camaraderie bound them tightly. The specter might have haunted that night, but together, they turned toward the light of a new day, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. Don't wait another moment. You need to subscribe now to catch all the wild twists and turns of exclusive stories coming your way. Smash that like button to fill the algorithm with the fire of this incredible journey. And you have to flood the comments section with your feelings and theories about the ending. This is the moment to share your thoughts. Share this video immediately with at least 5 friends who need to witness this thrilling conclusion. This is how we grow our community together.